Before we close the discussion, maybe we could hear just some final remarks from each panelist. And I guess just to end on a sort of forward-looking note, I'm interested in knowing, what about journalism or the press here makes you hopeful about the future of journalism in the country, in the Philippines?
I'm hopeful that we are now starting to see an audience that is trying to demand from us a bit more to do the kind of reporting that is called for in this, in the age of, you could say, illiberal, eroding liberal values and principles. Um, my hope is also for journalists to respond to these demands, to listen more to how the audiences are you know the things that they're asking from us, to rethink some methods. Of course, not to abandon the values, not to abandon the principles, the standards and ethics that we've hold ourselves to, uh, but to to be open to rethink, reshape, um, and move forward.
I agree with Camille. There's now more people, well, at least in social media, who are now asking for better coverage from traditional media, and that could only be better for us because we have to step up. We cannot just be complacent and do what we've been used to. Now that there are people actually looking at what we do, and that's a wake-up call. But I also I'm hopeful that there's also better discussion now about better wages, better working conditions for journalists. That is also very important to keep people who are good at what they do in this profession. We've seen a lot of people leave this profession, work for PR because, well, sadly, this profession doesn't, pay so well, and it cannot sustain possibly the kind of life that they want for themselves. And that's sad because we're losing talent, we're losing skill that we need to cover this country. And also, but with all the things that's been happening, I'm just hopeful that a lot of people are still committed to this profession. With the shutdown of ABS-CBN, for example, many of us could have chosen to leave and look for greener pastures and probably a more stable working environment. But I'm inspired by the example that my colleagues have been showing, braving the storm to cover the story of every Filipino that the country deserves to hear, despite the uncertainty of the working conditions that we are in. And for that, I'm hopeful that no matter what happens, there will always be journalists who will do their job, regardless of the administration, regardless of the catastrophe or pandemic that we're going to face in the future.
Ija?
Yes, I'm hopeful that more people will realize how press freedom is connected to other rights that we're enjoying. Because to define the state of press freedom means looking at various facets of society. The first being emphasizing the value of unrestricted free press and freedom of expression for all, not just for journalists. Second, highlighting democracy's deficits and actually emphasizing the role of informed citizens and the responsibility of the press to serve them or serve the public interest. And third, the importance of communication in relation to other human rights. So to holistically define the state of press freedom, we need to look at the different facets of society as well. Without a free, open, diverse, and robust media, democratic social change is virtually impossible, I think. So advocating for a free press and social justice are intertwined. They will rise or fall together. So we need to really deal with them as a whole and not just an isolated battle among us journalists.
For me, I'm hopeful that local media organizations continue to adapt even despite the challenges that we continue to face. Like, ABS-CBN really is an inspiration, that despite the shutdown, they have managed to adapt and go to YouTube, to FB Live to continue reporting. And they even reached, if I'm not mistaken, 10 million subscribers on YouTube. And that's really great news. And because news or truthful information, factual information, it's like water for people will keep on looking for it, even when it's when it's taken away. So I am hopeful for that. And yeah, I would just like to end on a note that I really believe everybody can and should be a fact checker. So I really hope the people can are able to be more critical readers and use their skills on fact checking when they see content surfacing on social media.
I'm hopeful. So what makes me hopeful? The fact that this conversation is happening in a public space with multiple newsrooms represented makes me hopeful actually. And the fact that there seems to be a growing consensus also among journalists that there's a role for public interest, accountability journalism in and the fact and that public interest accountability journalism is important. Calling people out for lies is important. That's a big development. I mean, I think in the past I've been part of a lot of these conversations in the past, and they've always been like things that happen beyond. I mean, not public conversation. So this is a big development. The other thing that makes me hopeful really is among the audience there's this realization. I think there's this growing realizations, it seems, that there is that this type of journalism is important, and that this is actually the what journalism is about. I think that's one thing that I realized from we've been doing these webinars, and people were actually going to these webinars. There's teachers, there's students, and they're all hungry for that for inputs. They're actually trying to learn this space. That is to me very powerful and very encouraging, and that bodes a lot for the future.
Well, thank you so much again to all of our panelists for such a rich discussion. Journalism has always been essential to the work of democracy building, but I don't think there's ever been a more urgent time for it. And you are all at the forefront of this. So thank you again for sharing all these great insights.